what I was going to talk about tonight is a subject I've been fascinated with for a long time. And as the title slide up there says, the great year of the world. So what is this? What is the great year of the world? Anybody have a concept? The idea here is that this is borrowed from archaic traditions, cultures, ancient cultures going back to Bronze Age and beyond had a concept that there was a greater cycle of change that affected the planet we live on, the world we inhabit. And this term, the great year of the world, is borrowed mainly from Plato. Plato referred to it as the great year. It's sometimes referred to as the Platonic year, after Plato, who was also very interested in it. Probably everybody is familiar with the Greek idea of the four ages, symbolized by the four metals: the age of the Golden Age, the Silver Age, the Bronze Age, and the Age of Iron. Likewise, there is a Vedic system of ages that parallels that, referred to as yugas: Kali Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, Treta Yuga, Satya Yuga, and then a Maha Yuga that encompasses them all. We're going to get into the specifics of that shortly, and how some of the traditions of the great year from the East complement those from the West, because we find when we go back to some of the oldest religious writings on the planet, we're talking about the Vedas here primarily, some of the pyramid texts which refer to great sweeping changes playing out over eons of time. A lot of archaic traditions. This is preserved in rituals that were passed down from generation to generation in many different cultures. I'm going to get into some specific examples of that. But basically the idea is based on this concept that the small, the micro, or the human scale is perceivable because it reflects a greater order of reality. That's sort of the concept behind it. And so we know that our lives are governed by cycles. We perhaps aren't as influenced by the cycles of nature as our ancestors were because of, obviously, our advanced scientific and technological civilization has insulated us quite a bit from, we're here now. We wouldn't have been doing this 100 or 150 years ago because we wouldn't have had lights to do it. People went to bed when the sun went down. So our lifestyle has changed considerably because we're living in an advanced industrial scientific society. That has its upside. The downside, perhaps, is that we've kind of gotten out of touch with some of the more natural rhythms, the rhythms that are the manifestations of these cycles. But let me grab my old trusty globe here to basically talk about the cycles that we're very familiar with. The most familiar, I probably should turn it. We're not going to be talking about pole shift tonight. What we call an astronomer would refer to as the diurnal rotation of the Earth on its axis, the daily rotation, which is just simply one 24-hour cycle, just going around. Our clock is based upon this rotation of the Earth. This rotation, this 24-hour rotation of the Earth, is based upon what as a marker point? When we start and we count that 24 hours around, what is it? Well, what actually, for any given location on Earth, when you were going to count a 24-hour cycle, what would be the marker? The sun. The sun. For example, if we were going to take a cycle that if you were on a position on the Earth, turns around in a full cycle relative to a star would not be the same relative to the sun. They're different by basically 4 minutes. That's that 4 minutes difference that accumulates. So we're talking about a tropical day, which is a day that's measured one cycle of the Earth going around, so that if we were standing outside and we had a meridian line, which is basically, let's see, this position here, due south, I believe, would be perhaps this way. Does anybody know the orientation of where we're at? I usually check it. That's probably east. This is south. Okay, so if we're facing south, imagine that you're facing absolutely south and you've got a vertical line passing overhead and then goes down to the due north. That's the meridian line. So if you picture the typical symbol for the sun, a circle with a dot in the middle, and you imagine that that circle is crossing your local meridian and the very center of the sun falls on the local meridian, you start a stopwatch. 24 hours later, it's going to have returned to that same point. If, by contrast, you're using a star, it's not going to be the same length of day. So that's how we measure our day. And it turns out that that 24 hours has a given number of minutes. We multiply the 24 by the 60 minutes, and then we multiply that by to get the total number of seconds per day. And while we do it, Cameron, do you know how to operate a calculator?
Oh, I'm going to pass to this Georgia Tech student.
Oh, the Georgia, yeah, it's a good thing we have a Georgia Tech student here. Okay, try this. 24 hours times 60 will give us the number of minutes in a day. 1,440? Okay, now that 1,440, we'll find out, is one of the principal numbers in a canon of sacred numbers that goes back. We find that number in the Bible, several places mentioned. We find it in the Vedas. We find that it was important to the Mayans and for their reckoning of time cycles. We also find that it's important in the measurement of land and space as well as time. Now multiply that by 60 seconds to get the total number of seconds in one solar day. What'd you come up with?
86,400.
86,400. Now that in turn has significance because it's related to a series of numbers that have been traditionally used to measure cosmic time and cosmic space. I'll give you an example. The diameter of the sun is usually taken to be 864,000 miles, measured in miles. The length of the Dwapara Yuga in the ancient Vedic writings was 864,000 years. We could find many examples, and I'm going to show you, if we have time, I'm going to show you more examples of those. We see there that in the Vedas, that number is used to measure a duration of time. In the terms of the sun, it measures a diameter, a spatial dimension. Now, of course, it only holds true. We only get that sacred number when we use miles as our unit of measurement. That number would not show up with another unit of measurement, for example, kilometers. Now, there's a reason for that. It's because the mile ultimately is a human measure, right? Where does the mile originate?